Hi, let's get started. Welcome. We're going to talk about detailed proof of creation. We're going to talk about the evidence supporting creation from a range of considerations. Just before I start, I just want to set the scene a little bit. The Almighty Creator desires a deep personal relationship with each one of us. If you're not actively serving Yah, then by default, you're serving Satan. My objective is to show you how you can make a big difference on earth and qualify for a position of high esteem in heaven for eternity. It's important to understand that as a believer, just being good is not the point. It's relationship with Yah that counts. Without this, you will be in a very unpleasant place in heaven with no way out, and my aim is to show you how to get close to Father. If you're a good person without a clear relationship with Yah, then you're in a spiritual no man's land and you'll not enter heaven when you die. The Creator has said regarding unbelievers, why would I want somebody to spend eternity with me when they don't believe I exist? Yah is calling everybody on the planet to be involved and serve Him and help Him to have victory over Satan. My goal is to show you how to do this. Fundamentally, we each need to learn to see things on earth from Yah's perspective, and my aim is to teach you how. So let's move on. So we're going to talk about proof of creation. And that's an image of an artist's impression of the galaxy. And you see the amazing numbers of planets and stars and so forth. Just amazing complexity and size. And this is a view of space from the Hubble's telescope, looking away from Earth into the distance. And you see here a cloud of space debris, out of which are coming suns. Each of these dots is of light, is a sun, like our sun. Some are bigger, some are smaller. You can see these maybe a bit closer. That's why they're brighter. But what you can see is there are a huge number of stars just in our galaxy. And then we get down to our solar system, and we've got our sun, and you've got the different planets, Mercury, Venus, Earth, etc., all perfect spheres, all moving perfectly in orbit around the sun, and absolutely stable, and creating a specific environment on planet Earth that is suitable for life. And then we get down to planet Earth, and here's Africa, Europe, Great Britain, where I am, South America over there, and you'll see South America fits into Africa over there. And so why is all this here? There's this huge complexity, this massive complexity and size and so many pieces. And then it all zooms in to planet Earth. And what I intend to show you going forward in the next hour or so is how all of this evidences the existence of the Creator. And it raises the question, why did he go to all this trouble to create all of this, and to create planet Earth, to create the plants and the animals, to create us? And the answer to that is that he was lonely and he wanted friends. He wanted sentient beings who had intelligence, who could discuss, who could reason, who could make decisions, who could make choices, and who could talk to him. Yah has always been here. He says that his name is Yah, the eternally self-existing. So he always has been and he always will be. There's an imponderable in this. Where did he come from? And he says, well, he didn't come from anywhere. He's always been here. The flip side of that is if you don't believe that the Creator exists, and I'm going to give you some very good reasons in the next few minutes as to why you should believe that the Creator exists. If you don't believe the Creator exists, all this stuff and us had to come from somewhere. There's talk about big bangs, etc., and we'll talk a little bit about that, but it doesn't matter what you believe, you're stuck with where did all the matter come from? Where did the creator come from? Now, the answer to that, from where I sit, is very clear cut. The creator exists. How do I know that? Well, I know that because I speak to him all the time. I know that because I've had miraculous experiences. I know that because I've been walking with him for 32 years and I've learned a lot from him. And the answer to evolution versus creation is not creation in 7 periods of 24 hours. As I explained a few weeks ago, the word translated day in Genesis is a period of indeterminate period of time. So in 7 indeterminate periods of time, Yah created all of this. Alternatively, all of this stuff somehow existed somewhere, somehow, and with some sort of innate intelligence, created planets and with perfect spheres and orbits and all the things that I've just shown you, and then created plants and animals, and then created human beings, and then I'm aiming to show you that it's just not possible that we are in existence without a creator. So let's start off with the basics. All matter is made up according to the periodic table of the elements. Everything on the planet, everything on the universe is based on this table. So we have hydrogen in the top left, we have helium in the top right, carbon, etc., etc., etc. Everything that exists, me, you, this stuff in the background there, is a function of a combination of these elements. And these elements had to be defined and constituted before any matter could come into existence. So it is my contention that a highly intelligent being, i.e., the creator, i.e., Yah, the eternally self-existing, worked this out before anything could come into existence. And then we get the building blocks of that. This is an atom, so any one of those elements in the periodic table is made up of atoms, which are made up of neutrons, protons, electrons, in a simple form like that. Now, that in itself is complex and precise because each one of these has a different one of those. So not only did he have to create that table, in creating that, he had to figure out the specific geometry of the protons and the neutrons and the electrons for each of the items on that table. And then we get to molecules. So there we've got water, we've got iron oxide, which is the basis of most soil, sodium chloride, which is salt that you eat at the table, and gold at the bottom there. And each of those is a combination of some of these producing matter. And all of this had to be figured out and designed before anything could come into existence. So if you don't believe there's a creator, please explain to me how all of this stuff figured out all of the stuff that I'm showing you now. I really suggest for your consideration that it's just not reasonable. There has to be a creator. And then we get to the laws of physics. E equals mc squared, sum of force equals mass times acceleration, etc., etc., etc. Now, those laws define how the planets interact with one another and with the suns, and how everything stays in a stable situation in the orbits around the sun, etc. Again, all of those laws had to be defined before anything could come into existence. I believe there was a big plan. I believe that Father created a huge mass of material with a whole mix of all the different elements, and then he created a big bang, and the stuff expanded and expanded and expanded, and then within that he crafted galaxies and solar systems and suns and planets and moons, etc. Again, those laws had to be thought out and defined. How do you think that that just happened? Which is essentially what evolution says. All these chunks of matter just got it in their heads to obey the laws of physics. It doesn't compute, folks. So moving on, we get to planet Earth, and we get to the plants and the flowers, and just look at all the complexity and the beauty and the delicious flavors and all these different things: arum lilies, pineapples, oranges, cacti. Each of these things carefully crafted. Each of these things beautiful, fitting together into a combined space of where we live. And I ask you to look at that image and ask yourself, how did the pineapple decide to be a pineapple as a random extension of evolution? It doesn't compute, folks. There was a creator who said, I'd like to create a piece of fruit that looks like this. It's a bit prickly, but if you carve away the prickliness, it's sweet, it's flavorsome. It has this top which you can create new uh, plants from, etc., etc., etc. You cannot explain. You cannot explain all of this by random evolutionary matter steps. And then we get the plants and the fish, sorry, the animals, the fish, the birds, the elephants, the butterflies. And again, the question arises, how did these things, all these precise complexities, how did they just invent themselves and then stop? That's the other thing you've got to consider. If evolution is real, why did everything stop evolving about 6,000 years ago, and now there's no evolution? There's a bit of devolution because of the degradation of mankind, etc. But basically, there's no more evolution. I contend that Father created that fox because he wanted to create an animal like that. Likewise the cat, likewise the bird, likewise the fish, likewise the elephant, likewise the butterflies, likewise everything else. They cannot just have come about. And there's I just got this yesterday and I thought it was rather cute. But notice how we react to that picture of the little bear waving its hand at us. It's cute. Where did that come from? How did that self-invent itself? And then if we look closer at the human body, and this is just a model of the human body, Look at all the organs and all the bits and pieces that make this thing up, that make us up, that we work, that we function. You've got a lifetime's experience of how this body of yours is able to do things, how this head of yours is able to learn a language, is able to learn how to do things. How did that just happen? Again, it speaks to a creative agency. And then taking a step back, before the plants and the animals can exist, the basic foundation of plants and animals is DNA. This is a representation. It's an organic compound. Each of these little pieces are different for different people, for different animals, etc. And they form the template for the replication and the breeding of plants and animals. This had to be all worked out. You see the molecular structures here. This had to all be worked out before a single plant or a single animal or a single human being could be created. How on earth, and I'm sorry to keep saying how on earth, but how on earth is kind of like a very weak statement. How did this stuff know to create itself without a creator? This speaks to me of a creator who carefully thought about how he wanted to create beings and plants, etc. And he worked all of this out and said, right, okay, hang on a sec. So again, to me, this speaks clearly of a creator. This can't have just happened, folks. Evolution doesn't make any sense at all. And I understand for people who have no experience of the creator is a little bit of an abstract concept that's perhaps a little bit difficult to get hold of. But folks, imagining that this all created itself requires, in my mind, way more faith than believing that there's a creator. I mean, this speaks to me of a creator. And then we get to sexual reproduction. And the thing to realize about sexual reproduction is that the male and the female have to want to mate. They have to fit together perfectly. The male chromosomes and the female chromosomes have to marry up to create the child. The female has to have an ovary, eggs, and a womb in which the fetus can form and grow into an adult. And then women have a clitoris. Now, why would that evolve? It's purely there for pleasure. And then we get with other animals and what have you. Butterflies have an intermediate stage of a chrysalis and a caterpillar. Birds have eggs with yolks and that we can enjoy eating. And so many other different animals have different reproductive processes, plants the same. And the thing is that the whole thing has to work perfectly first time. It can't just progressively figure itself out for itself. Now, what I do believe is true is that Father started with this whole mass, and remember, he'd never done this before. He'd never done this before, folks. So he was learning, he was experimenting. And he created that, and he created lots of planets. And some of them didn't work out very well, and eventually it worked out okay on Earth. And then he created all the plants and the animals. But he started with one cell organisms. So what the people who believe in evolution say is right, correct, in that creation took place in an evolutionary manner. We started with simple organisms. They got more and more sophisticated as Father gained experience. and got ideas as to how he'd like to go until we came to human beings. The problem that evolutionists have and unbelievers have is the silly idea that these things happened in 1 day periods of 24 hours. It's silly. It doesn't make any sense. There's no reason for father to go snap, 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 snap in 7 periods of 24 hours. He took his time. He actually enjoyed doing this. He said, oh, that animal worked out quite well. Let's try an animal that looks like this. That plant worked well. Let's try a plant that looks like that. That fruit tastes nice. Let's try a fruit that looks like this. Evolutionary creation. And then we've got emotion, love, desire, the soft things. How do these beings know to love one another, to desire one another, if they're just the result of some random progression of matter turning itself into human beings? Quite honestly, folks, it's really silly. I could use much stronger language, but how on earth do you get emotion and love, etc., unless a loving creator says, I am going to gift these beings that I'm creating with the capacity to love, the capacity to desire, the capacity to be sensitive, and so forth. The fact that Satan's got involved and messed everything up is a separate discussion that we had a few weeks ago. And then just a little bit further, so best dating sites in the UK, the love that a mother has for her child, that a father has for his child, uh, the love that leads to marriages and weddings and things like that. It can't just have self-invented itself, folks. And then let's take a step back and look at all of this. All of this is sophisticated, it's complex. The human body is much more complex than any structure, any system that mankind has ever invented. But this is London in the UK. This is about half an hour from where I live. I live just down the river, up the river from here. And look at those buildings. They are precise, they are specific, and they take people with years and years of experience and knowledge to design and build successfully. And it's my contention that the Almighty is like an engineer, like an architect, a super engineer, a super architect, that he's designed and architected everything that we have, that we've been looking at, in order for it to exist. And if we go a bit further, this is an oil refinery. And again, look at that complexity. It takes human beings with years of education, with years of experience, years to design and build something like that and to operate it. There is no way that that plant invented itself. You can't go and put all of these materials in a heap in the middle of this plot and come back 5 years later and it's all by itself created a working oil refinery. It won't have moved 1 inch. And that's what evolutionists are saying. Evolutionists are saying, if you put all of this stuff in a pile in the middle of this property, and you come back 5 years later, it will have self-invented itself into an oil refinery, or it will have self-invented itself into one of those buildings. It's, folks, it doesn't make any sense at all. There has to have been a super engineer, a super architect, a super this, a super that creator who designed it, who put it all together, that I exist, that I can talk to you, that you can listen to me. It didn't just happen, folks. And then if we look at motor cars, and I mean, this is a particular spectacular car. It's a Ferrari. I mean, maybe one of these days I'll get one of those. I somehow doubt it. But the complexity and the sophistication, again, takes people to design. And then what we have today, the world that we have, as we looked at last week, is all messed up because of the flood. And Noah's Ark we looked at, and it transformed the surface of the earth. But it didn't change human beings. It didn't change plants and the animals. And then we've had wars which have destroyed societies. There was a huge global atomic war, sometimes between Noah and Abraham in the Bible. Abraham was a survivor of an atomic war. So it is so that the world and the earth as it is today is a messed up version of the perfect world that the Creator Yah created. It doesn't alter the fact that He created us. We talked at length a few weeks ago about Satan and how he fell and how he rebelled and how he led mankind astray. And the wars, etc., are not something that Father intended. Father intended us to walk with him as his friends in peace, in love, in joy, and have a wonderful life on this beautiful planet. And instead, we've messed it up totally. But that doesn't stop us deciding to do whatever we can do to bring Yah to earth now, bring revival on earth, get filled with the Spirit of Yah, and do things to make a difference on the earth. And what that looks like is, if we look at the demographics of people on earth today, there's about, I don't know, I've lost track, there's about 8 billion people on the earth. And what this represents is, this is the mountain of Yah. This is the mountain of getting close to Yah. And so we've got about 6.8 billion. This was in December 2015, so that's gone up since then. Outright unbelievers, we've got about 100 million believing unbelievers. We've got about 22.7 million, and these numbers have changed in the last 10 years. 22.7 million servants of Satan. We've got about 22.7 million who believe in the Creator, of whom about 20 million don't do anything about it, so they're headed for the outer darkness. These ranks here are representations of where people will end up in heaven. Foolish virgins, people who believe, do a bit to serve Yah, but they've never been filled with His Spirit. Adulterous wives filled with His Spirit, but worshiping Jesus, worshiping the Bible, worshiping Muhammad, worshiping the Quran, etc. Wise stewards, good and faithful servants, overcomers, and friends, and really the ones that count. And the ones that I would challenge you to seek is to become at least a wise steward, preferably a good and faithful servant, preferably an overcomer, and preferably a friend. And what that looks like is that if you become an overcomer or a friend, you will sit on a high throne in heaven for eternity. Now, I think that that's something that's worth aiming for. And I encourage you to go for it. And that's what my ministry is about, is to help people to understand what's required to become an overcomer, become a friend. That's what I teach about. And the reason I'm teaching you about creation is I want you to be absolutely, completely satisfied that you can defend to anybody why you believe in the Creator. I want you to be able to testify to any unbeliever and say to them, have a look at this video. Tell me how on earth you can believe all of this magic itself into existence. So that's it, my folks. Folks, you are muted. If you've got questions, please just unmute yourself. Just tap the little microphone at the bottom of your screen and fire away. No questions. Okay, folks. Well, then, thank you so much for joining me. Next week, I'm going to talk about Father intended men and women to live together in a perfect, powerful union. I'll discuss the nature of the relationship between men and women that the Creator intends. and which is possible even now. And I look forward to seeing you on that call. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day.